Hello, hello, ladies. I'm so excited to be here with you today. It is mindset training time. And yes, this was supposed to happen on Tuesday, but I am experiencing a little bit of tech difficulties a little bit here in Puerto Morelos, Mexico, but that's okay. I found a workaround. So I'm excited to be here. I hope that you're ready with pen and paper to take some notes. I'm going to try to not go longer than 30 minutes if I can. So I'm going to make this short, sweet, but powerful enough that you get what I'm saying so that you can start thinking about how you think, how you feel, and the thoughts that go through your head and how they make you either reactive or proactive. So I'm excited. Mindset training. So your brain, it's a powerful creator, right? I started this journey to become a coach over 3 years ago. And I wasn't quite sure what that meant. I thought that I wanted to talk about clutter. I talked about mental clutter. And I also talked about physical clutter because I felt like the visual clutter also messed with our mental clutter, right? Which is true, it can. If you've ever had a messy desk and you look at your desk and you're like, I can't find my keys, I can't find anything. Like, where is whatever I'm looking for? And all of this clutter, all of this chaos in front of me. But then I realized that wasn't my true passion or my purpose around what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. And I've been getting more and more clear as the years have been passing by, as I've worked with people, as I've worked with more people, and gotten a little bit more insight into the minds of the women that I've spoken with, and getting a little bit more clear on the things that are going, that are keeping them up at night. Things that used to keep me up at night, like, why am I here? What is my purpose? You know, why do I have such negative thoughts in my head sometimes and other times I'm fine? Why does something like trigger me one way one day and I explode, and another time it doesn't bother me at all? And I know that these are some of the many questions that people are asking themselves. Now, when I first became a coach, I actually had started at like Googling, like, what can I do? Like, what can I literally get out into the world? What's my purpose? I was asking the questions. Is there more to life than this? Is there more for me to do? I always felt there was, but I couldn't quite figure that out. And you see, I think a lot of that was how I was thinking, believing at the time that what I was doing with my life, which I was really good at, was my calling. I thought, well, I'm a legal assistant paralegal. I'm really good at what I do. I've had a great, successful career. I've worked with many people who've given me amazing letters of reference, and I've kept in contact with some of them. 20 plus years that I've known some of them, and I've created these relationships. But just because I was good at it, it didn't light me up the way what I do now lights me up. And it was finding that peace within to actually figure that out. But you see, at the time, there was no peace within. You see, at the time when I was thinking I wanted more for life, I had been living a life where everything around me, my life was like there, but I couldn't participate because my job ruled my life. So my life revolved around my job. I felt like I couldn't think. I couldn't feel like anything but anger, resentment, and I was overwhelmed and anxious and thinking, I'm not worthy of anything else. And so I was going down that path. But I also was going down that path in a health wise way as well, because I was thinking, if I don't do something different, if I don't change my life path, if I don't change the trajectory that I see myself going down, well, I might not be here to talk about it. And I truly mean that. And I know it sounds like, wow, are you serious? I'm like, yes, I'm truly serious. because at the time I felt like I was working myself to my grave. I was working myself into my grave because I was working long hours. I had a long commute and I absolutely hated driving to and from work because anyone who knows California, the highways are mental. And I was working long hours and I was even bringing work home and I'd be working most weekends. And so I had no life outside of my job. And I felt that my life revolved around my job. And so I didn't see that there was any escape. Now, what happened was I was getting prompts. Now, I truly believe that when you start to at least even the littlest glimmer of wanting and thinking that you want more, but even not even sure if you are even worthy or deserving, or even if it's even possible, you've opened up your reticular activating system, your mind, the thing that tells you, that filters out most of the information that you see, and shows you what you're typically thinking of, you're focusing on. And because I had opened that up, I kept saying it over and over again. I need to do something else or I'm not going to be here anymore. I need to do something else or I might not be here anymore. And I kept saying this over and over. And then I was thinking, well, what could that be? I was asking questions, not realizing that I was actually putting the word out in a way for my mind to start looking for ways to show me that there was another path. And when I finally did find that other path, it was in the form of meeting a woman who introduced me to the health and wellness space. Now, that wasn't the space that I ended up staying in as far as like what it was. It was a product based company, but it opened up my eyes to the possibility of something different. And when I realized that when I finally started looking and started having information and things being revealed to me, that I knew the only chance that I would have of more, of something different, of changing the life path I thought I was on, was to be bold and take action without knowing what, all the how, like without knowing what was going to happen, without seeing the end result. Meaning, I was living in California. My husband and I were living in California with our little pup Jackson at the time. And we decided we were going to move to Las Vegas, like on a whim. And so I said it to him in December of 2017. And I said, I don't know how much more I can take of this. And then we decided in March to go for a little mini vacay in Las Vegas to look around. We had made the decision that we're going to do this. And I literally took a week off and we drove to Las Vegas, which is like 4.5 hour drive, four and a half hour drive, depending on who's driving. And we got there and we found a place to live. We rented a storage place because where we found a place to live, which wasn't in the greatest location, it was a furnished apartment. So we had to take some of our things and put it into storage. We had the landlord ended up, we secured to make sure that our landlord would be there for the hookup for our internet and our cable and all of that. So it was taken care of. And then we went back to work the following Monday. And I said, I'm leaving in 2 weeks. And I gave him 2 weeks notice. I had no idea. My idea was, I'm hoping they'll give me this opportunity to create a position online that I can work from home, which ended up happening to be the truth. But I didn't leave it just at that, or thinking like, well, I'm just going to tell you this. I went into the managing partner and I told him what I was doing. I told him and the HR director. And then I went and proceeded to go around to the office to other lawyers who I knew were strategically placed in the office, who were people that the managing partner relied on, that he held in high esteem. And I told them my plans and I got them on board. And so we created this position for me. Now, at first, it was only a 3-month trial. And it turned out to work out. And I still work with them on a part-time basis. In fact, I choose the hours I work. and I choose when I work. I choose if I decide I want to take a day off, I take a day off whenever I want. There's no structured time. I'm my own boss. And on top of that, that gave me the freedom when we moved to Las Vegas to figure out the rest of my life and what I wanted to do. And this is how I got into coaching, going through my self love journey, my self awareness journey, my self discovery journey, and finding my place and finding what I was passionate about, what my vision for this world is, what I could be, what I could give. But it took a long time because what was up here was swirling around with that was negative, was swirling around with all the great ideas. And so I have a process that I do with my clients to get that out of their head so that you no longer are focused on what you don't want, because we can find ways to stop ourselves. Oh, it's very easy. Like I said, the brain is a powerful creator, but we don't have to let that happen. So let's talk about mindset. I'm going to share my screen with you. So let's go here, share the screen. Okay, let's go. All right. So this, ladies, for those of you who've been a part of my world for quite some time, you've seen this before, you recognize it. This is the triggers cycle. It's our emotional cycle, I like to say, which is on repeat. So why am I showing you this? Well, I believe that what we as humans believe influences our thoughts and our feelings. And that's where our beliefs come from and how we form them, meaning something will happen. And it's usually something that has happened when we're younger. We take our experiences through our lifetime and we bring them forward into our life, moving forward. And a lot of the practices, a lot of the coping mechanisms that we adopted when we were younger, well, we brought them with us into our adult life. And we never really took time to upgrade them. It's kind of like, when you get a car, you upgrade your car, right? Well, for whatever reason, as humans, we've kind of like allowed ourselves to get into this cycle of believing that, well, how can I upgrade that, right? Because what's usually happening is that we are attaching a value system to ourselves through the word worthiness, right? And so when people say, well, I'm not worthy or I'm not deserving, they believe that there's a value system in place around the word worthiness, about who's worthy, who's not, how, if you're this, then you're worthy, if you're that, then you're not worthy. The thing is, we're all born worthy. There's nothing that you can do, nothing more, nothing less, that will take away from you being worthy. You are human, and as a human, you are worthy. Okay? So I want you to understand this. You are worthy. The value system that we as humans put onto the word of worthiness was placed there. I don't know when or how, but it feels to me like this terminology of worthiness became really prevalent, I guess, in our world when people started really competing for things, competing for space, competing for business. I found that around, especially before women became really, really comfortable in supporting one another, that we would compete with each other. And so that whole worthiness thing became, I believe, like something that we adopted as our own. Well, I'm not worthy, but she is. I'm not worthy to do that, but she is. And I think that value system, or the other thing that I used to do, which because of where I grew up, how I grew up, growing up poor with a single mother who was white back in the early 60s with 3 brown babies. We didn't fit the mold of what a family should look like. We looked different from everybody else. And we lived in social housing. And I believed that I wasn't worthy of a great life because of my circumstances of how I grew up. I believed that I was only deserving of a specific place, like knowing my place, what I was allowed to have. That was my thought. That was my belief. I believed at that time that the reason why it was just my mom and the 3 kids is because my father, at the time, he's different father than my two younger brothers, but my father at the time, I believed he didn't want me. I believed that because he didn't want me to know who he was. See, my mother never married him. And so when my mother had me, but then they didn't stay together, but she got pregnant again with my sister, who ultimately died at 6 months old. And they weren't together. And up until I was 14 years old, no father, except the one that my mom married again, got married, and she had my two younger brothers. But that union only lasted 3 years. And so out of that 14-year period, she had different men come into her life. And only one of them was a actual father who I was adopted by him and took his last name. But the rest of the time, there were men in the house, and one in particular who she had up until I was 14 was very abusive. It was very toxic. It was a very toxic environment. So I believed from that all men, especially black men, because he was a black man, my mom was attracted to black men, that all black men beat their women. And so I stayed away from black men, truth be told. I had a couple of boys that I kind of hung around with, but I had no intention of being involved with a black man because that's all I knew. So again, when I talk about what we bring with us when we're younger, we bring those beliefs with us because it's what we've learned. Now, these are learned experiences from my own personal experience, but then that's also through the lens of watching how someone else reacts to things, right? Or what can be passed down as a belief through a generation before me. Again, I have another generational belief of my mother. She was, I guess, hoping to pass it down to us kids, that the children are supposed to take their parents into their home as they're aging and care for them. And I believed that as long as I cared for you, I could still live my life. It didn't mean that I didn't care for you. It didn't mean that I didn't help you. But I did not believe that my life would stop at a specific time because your life was coming here. And I don't want that to sound harsh, but I was trying to explain that to my mom in a loving way so she would understand. It's that it's not that I don't want to be there where you are. But I thought the reason why you raised me to be independent was so that I could go out and live my life independently, right? So what you believe comes from usually when you were growing up and you brought those things with you based on your experiences, based on things that people told you to believe, based on your experiences of what you believe, what you interpreted, you experienced what you believed, and that's what you believe. Even an experience I had with a dog before I actually helped myself without realizing it. I kind of like self-helped myself. I was afraid of dogs for a long time because a friend of mine, when I was a young girl, her dog chased me literally up a tree. I'm not kidding you. And at first he had taken a nip out at me, and then I actually climbed up a tree and stayed there until he went away. And I had a fear of dogs. And my way of overcoming my fear was I was living in Florida at the time, so it was many years later. I had like interactions. I had like dogs, but I wanted to overcome the full fear of dogs because there had been dogs in my life growing up, but there was still the fear of the possibility of an altercation with a dog that wouldn't go well. So I ended up working at an animal shelter in Florida, South Florida. And I went in and I was cleaning the kennels and sitting with the dogs. And I was sitting with dogs like pit bulls and terriers, like the dogs that people were saying were the mean dogs. I was going in, putting myself in there. All they wanted was love. And that was my way of overcoming my fear. It was facing my fear and pushing it away because I was more powerful. Like I said, the brain is a powerful creator and it can create what you decide is going to be the truth. So what you believe will influence how you think and you feel, right? And what you can actually figure out what you're thinking just by how you're feeling. You know, you can be thinking like, oh, you could be feeling something like if you're feeling something really bad and you start thinking like, well, why am I feeling this way? And you can track it back to how you're what you're thinking about, and then you're realizing, okay, why am I thinking this way? What happened, right? And so it's really where your beliefs come from and how we form them. We're going to talk about that, noticing our feelings so we can track our thoughts and switching our thoughts to positive, solution focused, gratitude based thoughts. Okay, so here's this triggers chart as I was telling you about. This here is the cycle on repeat, right? So triggers being things like an event happening where something happens, someone says something, something happens in your environment, your day doesn't go well, you don't sleep well, that might trigger you, but you might have an argument with your significant other over something that's not even really, and that could be triggered because you're not feeling you're tired, right? Do you ever have those arguments with someone and you're like, why am I having this stupid argument? It escalates into something really out of control. And the reason why is because if you track it back when you're having the argument, because you can feel how you're feeling, you start thinking, realizing what you're thinking, and you're like, oh, and why am I feeling this way? I'm tired. So because I'm tired, I'm feeling this way, I'm thinking these thoughts, and that's why we're having this argument over something silly, right? That's how you can learn to change things around. But that takes time. So your trigger is like an emotion, like the anniversary could be the anniversary date of loss or trauma. It could be family friction. It could be that you have a relationship that just parted ways, whether it's romantic or professional. It could be you might feel judged or criticized. You're that type of person that doesn't like to get feedback, and that makes you automatically think it's judgment or criticism based on what happened to you when you were younger and you brought a belief with you that anyone who gives you feedback is really judging you. It's really criticizing you. And you are then placing yourself in that value system around worth because they're judging and criticizing you. You start thinking, well, I'm not good enough. And that's a value system based on the worth that you think that you are, right? So your trigger is going to evoke that emotion. On top of that, it's going to fuel the emotion based on whatever that trigger is. Whatever that trigger is, it's going to fuel your emotion. Now, your emotion is going to then, depending on the emotion, how strong the emotion is really going to be in what I call the space between moment. The moment between where you are starting to feel something based on what's happening, and you're starting to think about the meaning that you are going to give to something, right? Because it's not really the something, the trigger that's upsetting you as much as the meaning that you're giving to what's triggering you. So as an example, I know there's a lot of moms in this group. So your kids, right? You know your kids can push your buttons. I know I used to do that with my mom, so I get it. And we all did, right? Growing up, we tried to find ways to see how far we could go, how far we could push. So as an example, your kids might be like rolling their eyes at something that you say, and that's going to trigger you. So you're going to look at that and think, you're going to think about the emotion that's being evoked because you're feeling disrespected, right? And you start to get a little angry. And that's based on the meaning that you're giving to, because you're thinking, you're disrespecting me. Now, sometimes that could be true, but sometimes it might just be the kids are just joking around, right? And they don't understand that they're pushing mom's buttons in a way that gets you like going from 0 to 100 in your reaction to them, right? So that's reactive. Another thing might be you've had a long day at work, you come home, there's maybe dishes in the sink, your significant other is in the living room, he's sitting in his favorite chair, maybe watching some recaps of some sports on TV and drinking a beer, okay? You've had a long day, you come home, you see that, you see the dishes. Now, he's planning on going and doing the dishes or putting them in the dishwasher, whatever that is. But in the moment, you're already putting meaning to that he disrespects you because he knows that you've had a long, he knows that you come home, whatever job that he's talked to you during the day. I'm going to just give you this backstory. He talked to you during the day. He knows how crazy a day you've had. And the last thing that you needed, you're thinking that he should understand the last thing that you needed was to come home to find a sink full of dishes that could have been put by him into the dishwasher and set it before he sat down to drink his beer and watch TV. Now, people process things differently. Like he could be thinking, well, as soon as I finish watching the recap and finish this beer, I'm going to go out and put the dishes into the dishwasher. But before he even has that chance, you're already in that frame of mind, right? You've already looked, the emotion doesn't make you feel good. You already start then thinking about tracking it back to the thoughts you're having around it. He's disrespecting me. I can't believe he did that. Doesn't he care? He understood that I had a bad day. We talked about it earlier, and he knows this would trigger me. And he goes and he sits down as if he's got not a care in the world, and you start stacking that on, right? And so then you have an emotional blowout. Is this ringing close to anything that you might have experienced? I get it. It's normal, right? It's normal. It can happen. I get it. Here's the thing. He might be thinking exactly what I just said, but you haven't actually allowed that to happen because you've already gone from 0 to 100 without actually stopping yourself. That's the self-awareness muscle, right? But we're going to go a little further. So now that you've had that blowout, because the emotion is what drives your response, right? How you react. You became reactive. And what you say is something that whatever you do, you have a blowout, you say something. And you say something you don't mean. At least you don't truly mean it. But in the moment, it feels good to say it because you're angry. And in the moment, it feels good to say it when you're angry, but it makes you feel bad later. And we'll get to that. So it's going to drive the response in what you said. And you might even do something. You might throw something. Not at him, but you might throw something down on the table and storm off and say something mean and storm off and go and put the dishes in the dishwasher anyway. So now you guys get into this big blown out argument because he says, I was going to do that after I finished my beer, after watching the recap. I didn't realize that the time that you would be home. I didn't know this was going to, do you understand where I'm going with this? I didn't understand that this was going to trigger you. I apologize, but it's too late because by then you guys are arguing over something as silly as dishes in the sink that could have been put in the dishwasher before he sat down to have his beer and watch a recap. But he was looking at it from a different perspective. He wanted to look at it first and then go do that. Whereas you felt he should have done that before going and doing that because you felt you'd had a hard day and you felt very resentful that it was like he was on easy street and here you are in this frame of mind. So your response now has provided you with your reward, right? The reward is the result is that you guys had this big blown out argument and now you're not speaking until you've had time to cool off and you go back and you apologize for the things that you've said. But those types of arguments can undermine your relationship if you keep doing it over and over again, right? Because you start to feel resentful. Those become digs. Those become, you get over it, but then you hold on to it as arsenal to use at a later date to say, well, you did this before. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because our thoughts and our feelings are going to dictate our responses based on the meaning that we've given to the thing that triggered us. And they're going to create the reward, which is usually, if you're not self-aware around it, you have a negative response. And you're going to feel bad because you're thinking bad thoughts, and then your actions are going to mirror that, right? You're going to have the blow-ups. You're going to have to go into fix-it mode once you've cooled off. And as I was saying, enough of those moments in your relationship could deteriorate just because you both aren't allowing yourselves to be on the same page because you're not, number one, taking time to reflect that, oh, I'm feeling bad, I don't like this, and stopping yourself from saying something you don't truly mean, but that you're also allowing that you don't you say something, and you're not allowing for the fact that you should be listening more so that you can get a better understanding, because he could, if you had allowed him to say, oh honey, I'm sorry, I actually sat down to watch the recap, I was drinking a beer, and as soon as I was done here watching that, I was going to go actually do that, and that probably would have been like, okay. But because you allowed the emotion, you allowed the feeling and the thoughts to escalate, it brought you to a whole new level. Now, you have enough moments of those in a day outside of that scenario, they rob you of something extremely precious and valuable, and that is your time. Because what you're doing is you're allowing your emotions to manage you. You have blow ups, and then you have to go back and you have to fix things. And so that keeps you stuck, not even really present in your day to day, because you're always having to fix. It's like you're always fixing things. You're always managed by your emotions. You're losing time because your time is focused on those moments. Now, the positive response, because there is a positive reward. You have a positive response, meaning you become self-aware of the trigger, which is how you're feeling, right? Based on what's happened. And you consciously track your feelings back to your thoughts. And you learn to make decisions based on logic rather than emotion. Because when your emotions get dialed up, your amygdala gets dialed up, your prefrontal cortex gets dialed down. Your thinking, it gets dialed down. You can't think logically because your emotions are heightened. Now, this positive response, as I said in the scenario, I said it a few minutes ago, is that by allowing yourself to go in and ask, like, why are the dishes still in the sink, but not in an accusatory way, because it's also the tone of our words, and our words do matter. And it really takes time to really like flex that muscle where you learn how you're, to listen to your tone, to actually be able to say things in a way that's not accusatory, because it allows space for the other person not to go on the defensive. And then he could have said, as I said, oh, I'm sorry, honey, I didn't even realize the time. I know you had a rough day. Don't worry, I was just watching the recap, finishing my beer, and I was going to go out and put the dishes in the dishwasher. And that would have calmed things down. And you would have been like, okay, I dealt with this in the moment. There was no blowout, so that meant that there was no not speaking to each other for a few hours, or maybe until the next day. And you weren't robbed of time, because maybe in the time when you were coming home, you had plans to do something, but that derailed them. So I hope that was helpful for you. So as I was saying, we typically are more reactive than we are proactive in our responses if we're not self-aware around this cycle, right? Because it becomes triggers, emotions, response, reward, trigger, emotion, response, reward, and it goes round and round and round. And it could be several times a day where you're getting triggered, right? So let's talk emotions just for a second. We are typically responding, and I guess I'm going to go over a little bit. I'm sorry, I really feel like this is really important for you to hear. So stay to the end. I promise you, I'm bringing this to a point that's important. We typically respond from one of two states of mind, okay? It's one or the other. I've talked about this before recently in my lives this week. It's powerful or it's a primal state, meaning the feelings that feel good or the feelings that don't feel good. So as I was saying, when in the previous description or example I gave you, you were coming from a primal state. So it could have been either you were overwhelmed because of work and you brought it home with you. You were disappointed that you were thinking, he knew that I was in this state of mind all day. It was a crazy day, and I come home to this, and he did this on purpose to make me feel bad, right? Or anger, or you could be irritated, right? And those are some primal states. And if once you are in a primal state and you realize I'm in this place, that's when the thoughts, right? You're not even thinking about it. Your thoughts, your feelings are going to just say, thoughts, back me up. And the thought is going to like really like dial it up. And that's when you're going to react. And so when you're, but the other state is the powerful state, right? Where it's like feelings of like hope and gratitude and joy and compassion and peace and calm and curiosity and courageousness, right? You're going to be confident, excited, even maybe even optimistic, and you be more in a celebratory frame of mind, grateful, right? But when you find yourself operating from the primal state in the heat of the moment, because you're feeling bad feelings, right? Like as I said, irritation, anger, overwhelm, disappointment, whatever that is, and you're thinking negative thoughts, like, oh my gosh, how could he disrespect me this way? Doesn't he know how I feel? He doesn't obviously care or respect me, care for me, or care about me, or respect me. And so you're thinking those negative thoughts, and then you become reactive and you say or do things you don't really mean to say or do. But at the time, as I was saying earlier, you feel justified, right? You're feeling justified that you should respond this way based on how you're feeling. But then you come to realize after that, after you've cooled off, to fix it. So all in all, what that's doing is disrupting your day, and it can literally rob you of your time. So when people say that there's not enough time in the day, I always want to like come back with the question of what are you focusing on during the day that's robbing you of your time, that makes you feel like you don't have enough time in your day to get stuff done. Because I mean, are you understanding what I'm saying here? Because we all have the same amount of time. Every single person in the world has 24 hours. And there's a lot of people in the world that have been able to manage this piece of their life, this emotional piece, because they become more dialed in to how their emotions are working, and they're allowing themselves to be really come dialed into how they think, so that they can stop themselves from being reactive. It literally comes down to how you're feeling, what you're thinking, and the meaning that you're giving to what's happening in the moment, which is based on the state of mind that you're in, right? So if you're in that primal state, and like as I said, those emotions that of anger, irritation, overwhelm, anxiety, like stressed, and you track your thoughts based on how you're feeling back to that, right? And because you don't feel so happy at the moment, and you give that moment a negative meaning, you're going to respond, right? Like I said, you're going to be reactive from that primal state of being. But there is hope. So this is why I want to do this day, because I want you to have a little bit of a roadmap of what you can do. Like I said, it's not a one and done. This is something that I work on every single day. I've been married almost 26 years. It hasn't been perfect at all, by no means. But because I have these tools, I understand that it takes time, it takes work. It does actually take me using my ears and really truly listening to and being actively engaged in the relationship from a place of it's not just me, it's we. It allows me to become more consciously aware of me, how I feel, how I think, and how I react. It's my decision, because he doesn't have a decision to that. It's just like the husband, like I said, he's sitting on the couch having a beer, watching the recap, and it might piss you off, but it's up to you. You have the choice to you can either react, or you can wait and actually ask and get the response of, oh, sorry, honey. I'm going to do that after I finish my beer. Not too much longer, just watching the recap. And that can alleviate that pressure. He doesn't have to get on the defensive. You don't have to become reactive. And you can, guys don't have to be robbed of valuable, precious time together. So what you can do in this is as I said, it is not a one and done. It takes time. If you make the conscious decision to start doing this now, it will be very helpful, not only in your relationships with your family and your significant other and your kids, but other relationships as well. It helps you to be able to navigate your relationships out in the world, because you become more dialed into how you operate, right? How your brain is a powerful creator, and you allow yourself to become consciously aware of that. So what you can do is, number one, this is the part around the emotions. When you are triggered, the first thing you want to do is you want to start noticing the feelings that you are feeling. Like really, once you start feeling it, you got to like that, start like, oh, and you know it. I mean, you know how you're feeling right away, but you also have to allow this to take over before you allow the feeling to take over. Okay. and you get that feeling, you allow yourself to notice the feeling and you track it back to what you're thinking, right? So you track it back to what you're thinking based on what's the meaning that you're giving to what just happened, okay? So you know the thoughts are there because you're giving meaning to an event, something's happened. And then I want you to get curious about why you're thinking those thoughts and if they're true or just negative emotion based thoughts. Like I said, when you're thinking, he didn't put the dishes in the dishwasher, disrespects me, he doesn't care about me. What is he thinking? Like, am I a slave to him? Does he think I'm supposed to do it? All of these thoughts, right? Are they true? No. If you go and have that normal, just like you go and have that conversation with him, you give him the chance to explain, and he says to you, "Oh, I'm sorry. I was just actually watching the recap, having a beer, and I'm going to go do it." So that means that all of those thoughts and that meaning that you were giving are not true, right? The next thing is you check your energy because sometimes we get reactive when we're tired. Remember, I said that? Lethargic from poor sleep habits, right? You feel tired, you feel lethargic. Maybe you can feel lethargic if you don't eat right, and that's something else that I want you to talk about to realize too, because what we feed our bodies and also hydration is important. But you have poor sleep, and maybe as I said, poor hydration that can play a part in it. Taking care of your body should be on the top of your daily list, right? Your mind, body, and your soul. Because what you feed yourself, the proper hydration and rest is really important, especially exercise too. Like even getting the blood pumping through your body. That also contributes to your energy, how you're showing up. So then after that, next you decide that you're not going to be reactive. I know you're like, oh my gosh, all of this? Yes, but it's in a split second. It's up to you to decide. Because as I said, he might be doing something that you're putting meaning to that really isn't going through his head, but it's going through your head. And it doesn't mean that's what it means to him. But if you don't catch yourself, that's what it becomes to you. And it becomes something more than it really is, right? So you switch your thoughts to more positive thoughts, right? You start thinking, okay, get solution focused. Like, let me ask him, why haven't you done that? I was hoping that would be done. And making sure that you're more consciously aware of the words you choose to say it so that he doesn't have to become on the defensive. And he can then simply say, I'm using this analogy to drive it home so you get it. So around relationships, because I know relationships is a big, huge thing. People fight about the littlest things. A sock on the floor. It means that you disrespect me. You don't care about me. You think that I'm your slave, that I'm your housekeeper, that I'm nothing more to you than that, right? But it could just be a sock on the floor. It doesn't have to be more than that. But we put meaning into it. So you're gonna decide not to be reactive and switch your thoughts to something more positive, more solution based. Ask the question, he can answer, and you're like, oh, right? And that's really the steps to stopping yourself from becoming reactive to a situation and blowing it more out of proportion than you really truly want it to be. Because if you can relate, I know what it's like myself to be in a conversation that turns into a discussion, that turns into an argument because we both get defensive, and then we stop talking to each other, and then time is lost. Because what we may have planned for the evening, now we're no longer doing it from a place of joy, gratitude, calm, peace, all of those powerful emotions. But instead we're in that negative, irritated, angry, overwhelmed, stressed, resentful frame of mind, and so we lose time. So I want you to really start thinking about that. Now I work with my clients with this. It's part of my program. In the beginning, we build on those foundations so that you have these strong foundations in place. Learning about this, and all I'm talking to you about is neurosculpting. That's really what it is. It's switching your brain from this thought based on your feeling, taking it from the thought that doesn't serve you to a thought that serves you. And the more you become self-aware of your patterns, your triggers, you can switch it. No longer will something like coming home, seeing your husband sitting on the chair watching the sports recap, drinking a beer, knowing that's a pattern he does, and he hasn't done that. But maybe, just maybe, when you guys start communicating better, he's going to do that before he goes in and checks out the recap. He's going to go and put those dishes in the dishwasher, and he's going to go and sit down and have his beer, and you're going to come home and there's going to be no dishes in the sink. So it's learning to respect each other in that way, right? It takes practice. It really does, like any muscle. And in time, you learn to act to, and eventually you strengthen your self awareness muscle around it. And then you find yourself being less reactive and more proactive when you get triggered by noticing when you're not feeling good, by tracking the feelings back to what you're thinking, asking those questions around it, and by making a new decision and how you're going to respond. And responding can simply be by maybe even removing yourself from the situation and going and thinking, cooling down, letting yourself go and cool down for a minute before you go and ask the question, so that you're not coming from an on offensive, aggressive way, but you come from a more calm state of mind. And then, and so you're not responding from that primal state, but you're actually, I should say, you're not going to the person and like going at them from a primal state, but you're actually from a more powerful state, because you're more at calm, you're more at peace, and you can ask from that level. And so they don't actually then get on the defensive, which is another primal state, and then it becomes escalated into something that it doesn't have to be. And that can help you with your relationships. I know, because, as I said, I am going to be celebrating 26 years next month. And in the very beginning of our marriage, like all the way up until really, pretty much up until just like a few years, now that I've been a coach for over 3 years, it was still a little bit rocky, because I didn't know any better. I didn't know I had a lot of resentment. A lot of it was because of I allowed time to rob me of, being more calm and peaceful and grateful, because I was focusing on my feelings and letting them direct my thoughts, which then directed my actions when I became reactive. And so when I allowed myself to go through the process of learning this, and then being able to like and bring it into my own life and into my relationship, and not only with him but with other people, it's allowed me to have more calm and peace. I come from a place of gratitude. I really do. And I think it's very helpful when you can become more aware around how you respond to things. And just by doing these little steps can help bring more peace and calm into your life, so that you don't have these escalated discussions that escalate into arguments over little things that don't have to be anything more than just little. Like the sock on the floor doesn't have to be anything more than just a sock, right? The dishes in the sink doesn't have to be anything more than husband's going to get to it after he just watches the recap and he has a beer, and he was planning on doing it. He just didn't realize the time was passing, and you were here, right? And it wasn't anything about disrespect to you. It was just that he was in the middle of that, and it wasn't that he wanted you to feel resentful of him and that he feels that you're a slave to him and that you should be doing everything, or someone putting the sock on the floor and thinks that you're a slave and you should be picking up after him. It's not that at all. If you allow that to be the truth, then it will be. But if you can change your mind around it, and come from a different place, it really will be more calming for you. The other thing I want you to start learning how to do too is focusing on gratitude. And I was going to put that into this training, but I think what I'm going to do is have another training around gratitude. So I think I'll plan for that for next week. So I hope that was helpful for you guys to hear today. I hope that you learned something. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Definitely, I do have, I said, a program around this. It's around building that foundation, creating that life that you want, where it's, you're not reactive. It's just being able to live your best life, as the best version of yourself, where you love yourself fully without judgment or criticism. I want you to be able to have that life where you fill your cup daily, so that you don't have resentment. You don't have less joy in your life, but you're actually more joyful. You're living your life. You find that you've designed your life in such a way by doing the inner work so that you can have the life that you love and that you come from this peaceful place. And so you don't lose time in your day because you don't allow your emotions to manage you, but you have this life where you are in control of of your emotions, because you are consciously aware that obviously we are emotional beings, and that if we can just learn this step and bring ourselves back by that split second, knowing how we feel and tracking it back to how we're thinking, so that we don't become reactive, and rather we just allow ourselves to come from that powerful state where we're not aggressive, but we're actually allowing ourselves to come from a more calm state of mind when we're dealing with those trigger moments. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that you guys had an amazing week. It's been fabulous here in Puerto Morelos, and the weather's been really super hot, but that's okay. I love it here. I hope that you guys had a great week. I hope you have a great weekend. Remember to navigate your days always with an attitude of gratitude, because with the right attitude, it puts you in the right mindset for when life throws her curveballs or puts up those roadblocks. You'll be in a better frame of mind to manage your emotional trigger moments. Ladies, I have my program. It's a 6 month container. If you're interested to know more about that, I'd love to talk to you about it. But if you actually, and again, as I said, it starts with mindset work, and we talk in the container. We talk about this very thing, about being able to like flip the switch, mainly not allowing the thoughts and feelings to manage your emotions, because you don't want that to happen. And that is a process, and I take you through that so that you have a better life, right? That's what we all strive for, to be able to have a better life. So I hope that you guys DM me. Actually, I'll put the link to book a connection call with me, and we can just talk about it and see where you're at if you want to know more about it. And yeah, I'm gonna do a gratitude training next week. All right, guys, I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.